House of David Season 2, Episode 7. We are almost done with this season, only this episode and the next episode to go. And today we confirmed some of my fears from early on in the season. Of course, we're going to talk about Episode 7 in its entirety, including the big twist at the end with all the stuff and all the things. If you haven't watched it, of course, feel free to watch this episode and get some spoilers. But if you have watched it, let's dive in. Leave your comments down below what you thought about this episode and your favorite parts throughout. We're going to be focusing on 3 separate parts today. Number 1, Eshbaal and his, whatever he's doing. Number 2, Adriel and his rise to power, or his attempt at rise to power. And then 3, of course, David and Michal's marriage. We saw it last time is kind of official, just made it an actual thing. And that's where we're going to start today, is kind of starting at the beginning, which is David and Michal's invitations going out to the nation of Israel. So let's jump into this. Here we go.
There's a prophet among you. I, the Lord, will reveal myself to them in visions. I will speak to them in dreams. And in the towns of Judah and the streets which are deserted, there will be heard once more the sounds of joy, gladness, the voices of the bride and the bridegroom.
Take water for you and the horse. Go.
All right, so right now we're in Judah. We see Adriel and his son Jordan. Of course, he's got his other sons around as well, but Jordan has been the main son of Adriel that has been kind of shown to us primarily since the early on in season 1. And so here we see him getting the invitation to David and Michal's wedding, and he sees his opportunity a little bit here.
What is it?
An invitation. The giant slayer will wed the princess.
It is Michal.
A new dawn in Israel.
Now here you can see that he has remember, Adriel within the house of David is the leader of the tribe of Judah. Now we've talked about this several times. This is not historically accurate. In the scriptures, we know Adriel as Adriel the Maholathite, which means that he wasn't part of the tribe of Judah, most likely. He was part of some other tribe, possibly Dan. And so there's some other tribes that he could have been part of, basically, during that time. Most likely, almost certainly not Judah, and he definitely was not the leader of the tribe of Judah. But in the house of David, I understand, like, in the storyline of this show, I understand why they have him here. And I understand why, he's in the position that he's in. It just doesn't make sense historically, which is kind of annoying. But here, you can see his reaction here is kind of like, almost that of like declaring war. He's not super excited and happy. He's not sad about this. It's very much himself seeing the future of the rise of the tribe of Judah. And so his aim is to make Judah the most powerful, to have control of the nation. And he is going to try to do that through David. And so that's kind of what we see here as we get into the beginning of this episode. Now, as I scooch forward, we get to go to Eshbaal here, who is asleep in the palace of Gibeah, and he's having a little bit of a nightmare. So we see here the silos, they're burning, and Eshbaal, of course, is waking up from a nightmare from when he was captured by, we know who it is now, but I won't talk about it in this episode just in case you haven't seen episode 8. But when he was captured by those people, we see that he's obviously being whipped, he's being tortured, and we don't know much more about that. We've only really gotten one flashback from that time period, and it showed that he quote unquote escaped and that he quote unquote killed all his captors is what he said, right? And we've said since the very beginning of this season, there's something going on with this guy. This does not look correct, right? There's definitely some weirdness going on, and there's definitely some things that that I would have some questions about, let's say. But here Eshbaal wakes up, and clearly it is associating his torture and his whipping with what is going on outside, which is the fire. So here we see the king's silos. This is quite interesting because it's really, really interesting, not because it has anything to do with the time of David or the time of Saul, but there is another connecting point biblically to the silos of Gibeah. And so I don't know if they meant to reference this or not, but in Judges chapter 20, there's a war between Israel and the tribe of Benjamin, okay? So then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. And the chiefs of all the people of all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword. Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah, and the people of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this evil happen?" And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "I came to Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, and I and my concubine to spend the night. Leaders of Gibeah rose against me, surrounded the house against me by night. They meant to kill me. They violated my concubine. She is dead." There's a lot of stuff that has to go along with this, right? But the idea here is that there's a war, basically, here that has to do with Israel and the tribe of Benjamin at Gibeah. And at Gibeah, the grain silos end up being burnt down here in Judges chapter 20. So I don't know if they tried to make this connection, because the connection would be that someone in Israel basically is against someone in Benjamin, right? Which, of course, within the house of David makes a lot of sense to be like, okay, Eshbaal, or the people of Israel, are against Benjamin, which is his father Saul, right? So it kind of makes sense that this would be connected, but I don't know if they actually meant to do this or not. So I did find it quite interesting, though, there. We've talked about that passage, I believe, before in Judges chapter 20, when talking about Gibeah specifically, because this is where this all takes place here. So this guy is obviously a very important person. We have no idea what his name is quite yet, although we do know that he's the same guy that killed Dinah's father, and he's been around with all the different things that have been happening in the last season or so. And so he's obviously important, but we haven't been introduced to him in any way or know who he is quite yet.
Leave the weapons.
So obviously not very great. We see as they get attacked, everything happens here. And then we see that basically Eshbaal decides that he's going to offer to talk to the king of Edom in order to have some supplies, because they just had all of their food burnt right before the winter, essentially, is what they said. So now they don't have any food to get through the winter, which is, of course, not very good for the kingdom of Israel. And so now, and again, none of this happened scripturally, by the way, all the grain silos being burned and all this stuff. I think this would have been a big enough event that this would have been recorded, but this did not happen as far as we know, for sure. But here Eshbaal is saying, hey, let me reach out to the king of Edom. I know that he's a vindictive guy. I know that you don't like him. You haven't talked to him in a long time, but let me kind of, get this together.
Starving people will do anything.
What about Edom?
The alliance of peace between us and Edom is fragile. The king is a bitter and vindictive man.
Now, who is Edom or Edom? We know one of them is in the show. One of the Edomites is in the show, and that is Doeg. Doeg the Edomite, of course, being a person who is extremely important in these next few episodes. And he is a huge part of what happened during this timeline with David and Saul and all the things here. Now, in the show, they do elevate his position a little bit in order to give him a little bit more screen time, which makes sense being the show that it is. But we have one example of an Edomite in Doeg. The Edomites themselves, of course, are the antithesis of the Israelites. We have Jacob and Esau, and the descendants of Esau turn into the Edomites, and then the descendants of Jacob, who then is named Israel, become the Israelites. And so these two brothers have descendants that kind of fall next to each other, and the Edomites are kind of perpetual enemies of the Israelites throughout much of the time during this moment here. Now, they aren't super strong at this point, the Edomites. Israel is certainly much stronger than the Edomites, but in a few years' time, there is going to be a moment when the Edomites are going to be much more powerful, and the Israelites are going to be much less powerful. And that is going to be coming pretty quickly within the House of David timeline here.
We have not spoken in 20 years. I fear stirring a hornet's nest.
I will negotiate with them.
And how do you intend to negotiate without losing your head?
Father, this is one situation where my reckless and indulgent past may benefit us. Let's just say I once spent a memorable night in Edom with the king's closest advisor. We are friends, of a sort. Let me talk to him.
So all of this is a lie. As far as we know, all of this is a lie. Eshbaal does not have friends in Edom. He does not, at least not friends that he's talking about here. But he is going to talk to the king of Edom, so to speak, as far as we know. And he's going to come up with something that we're going to come back to in just a little bit. First, let's jump back to David and Michal, and let's talk about an interesting piece of kind of a precursor to them getting married, which we'll jump to in a moment. I'll touch on this real fast. I won't play through it. But this happened as well, where we get the introduction of Sarah and Jonathan's baby, who is going to be on the way. And of course, we know who this is. This is going to be Mephibosheth. This is the only son of Jonathan that we see in scripture, who is basically crippled because he's dropped by a nurse who in this show, I think, is going to be his mother. I think his mother is going to drop him, and that is going to cripple him. And that is where he comes later on. David is very favorable to Mephibosheth because he loves Jonathan and has made an oath to him. And so he actually protects Mephibosheth while he actually kind of allows all the other ancestors of Saul to be killed during this time. So it's quite crazy. But we do get that little moment of Sarah declaring that she is pregnant, which is very cool. Then we jump into this moment here with David and Michal basically at a mikvah, which is kind of cool. So this is, let me move my head real fast. This is called Me Tahara, which is the waters of purity. And this isn't actually a historical location. This is just a name, basically, that's the Hebrew for waters of purity, okay? So Me Tahara is waters of purity. And so here they're basically just saying this is some sort of mikvah somewhere. Now this is this is a little bit strange because mikvah weren't really around during the time of David. They really became more popular during the time of Jesus. And so a long time away from now, this wasn't something that you did more regularly. Like this wasn't like a natural part of the Jewish society at the time where you just go and you're like cleansing yourself, like you'll see in The Chosen. Like in The Chosen, they'll be like, "Oh, have you ritually, purified yourself?" And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, of course I did that." Where in House of David, they shouldn't be saying any of that. There shouldn't be any mikvah really. There wasn't really any. It didn't exist. And especially for like marriage and things, a woman would probably bathe as her natural kind of time to go and bathe before her marriage. But she wouldn't do it as a ritual of like, this is a common thing that's happening here. So take that with a grain of salt within the scene. I do like this scene. I do think it is cool. It is not historically accurate. Let's put it that way.
This bath is a mikveh. A ritual immersion before marriage to honor this new beginning.
Yeah, so this is a way more modern thing. Even during the time of Jesus, it wasn't necessarily a law or something that you had to do before marriage to do the mikveh. It was more of a tradition at that point. And then now in modern times, yeah, there's way more tradition and rituals that go along with it that are more modern currently, but that wasn't a thing during the time of David.
It's filled with living water from the earth.
Yep. I love the little tidbits they are adding, though. Sarah is explaining what a mikveh is. This is for ritual purification. And then Jonathan's coming back and saying it's filled with living water from the earth. This is a very, very important distinction because the water can't just be like normal water that sits in a hole in the ground, okay? It has to be living water, which means that it has to have water that runs in and out of it, and that it's connected to something like a spring, or there's other water that runs into it and then cleans it. It can't be water that's just sitting there and stagnant. Otherwise, you're just going to make yourself even more dirty, even more unclean, right, by getting into it. And so that is a really good distinction that he puts in there.
Blessed are you, eternal God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us through mitzvot.
All right, so now what are they reciting here? It's a combination of a couple of different things. I believe some of these are verses from like Hosea, and then there's another part of it that is a prayer that I wrote down. It's called the Shechechienu. So the Shechechienu is like, it's a partial thing that they do at bridal ceremonies today. It's like a particular prayer that they have, but this is not something that would have been done during this time. It is something that is more modern now.
You are to immerse yourself 3 times, completely.
It is interesting how she, every time you'll see, she comes out of the water and she puts the water on her hair as well. One of the things that is very important for a more modern day kind of ritual like this is that every single one of your hairs gets wet. And so like when especially when girls go in the water, you know how your hair kind of floats on top if you don't go all the way down. They make sure that your hair goes all the way into the water so that everything is touched by it, basically cleansed by it. And so that's part of the ritual as well. So I wonder if that's part of her doing that, is she's trying to get the water all over her hair there.
Blessed is the eternal God of all creation.
And here we've got the scenes going back to the beginning when they first met. So this is the first time that Michal sees David playing at the wedding in season 1.
Bless me with life.
You have sustained me and allowed me to reach this moment.
And then he looked back at her after their first interaction. They kind of fall in love at first sight, right? Which again, we've talked about many times. David is never said in scripture to have loved Michal. It's only said that Michal loved David, which we're going to talk about in a moment because it's actually incredibly important. Here again, right after he plays for Saul in the court, he sees Michal there, right before actually. He sees her in the court again.
I will betroth you to me
With righteousness.
And here, all the different moments where he was playing an instrument with Saul there or whatever, writing the songs for her and all that kind of stuff.
justice, with goodness,
The weird makeout session they had right before going to Goliath.
passion. I will betroth you to me forever,
The secret hand-holding moment there.
and we will come to no other land.
All right, so we have the mikveh there, and of course, Michal getting ready throughout this time. Some things that we're not going to talk about as well. We have, actually, we'll talk about it in a moment, but we won't really get into it too much. We have this moment here with Merav and Dina going hunting. This is a total historical inaccuracy as well. I know that Dina is like more unnaturally sort of like masculine, and she's like killing boars and stuff. For women to go out with a bow and arrow just like for fun, or like to be the main people to go and find the meat for the feast, would be like totally not the way that this happened. You would be totally emasculating all of the warriors and the men that are, this is their job, right? This is how they find their authority and their worth in the system that would have been during this time. For women to go out and to do this would have been like super, super strange. Very, very, very weird. I won't go as far to say that it is actually impossible, but it's pretty darn close. Pretty darn close to being possible here. But we do see them here hunting, and we see a couple of different things I think that the story is pointing to. Number one, we see that Merav has a really hard time when the deer that they hunt is dying, and she doesn't want to look at the deer dying. She feels really sad about it. I think this is a piece of a foreshadowing that we're going to see for the future of this episode and into the future of later things as well. They talk about life and death here, and Dinah sort of tells her what is happening here with, like, you know, like, this is a gift from God, and we're going to, like, in order to pay for this life that we took, we're going to use it in order to give more life, right? We're going to cook the meat. We're going to give it to the people of the nation in order to feed them, right? Like, that's the sort of mentality that she's trying to give Merav here, is that this death means something. That's going to be important for later. That's definitely a big piece of foreshadowing that we're getting for the later part of this episode, which we'll talk about. So just remember that this death means something. It is for something else. It is for a purpose. That's kind of what Merav is learning here during this moment here. Now, if we continue on, we get to this next part. I won't talk about this scene too much, but I'll let it play a little bit in the background. Jesse talking to King Saul. He's quite rude to King Saul. I think in reality, he probably would have been killed here. But he very much does not like the fact that, one, he lost a son in Saul's army. And number two, that he's now lost another son to Saul's family as David goes to marry into it. And he tries to pay a mohar to pay for the bride, which is going to be David's bride. Saul doesn't allow him to do that. In fact, he tries to give him something in exchange, basically as a gift. But then Jesse does not want to take it because he doesn't want to be indebted to the king. Now, all of this is not, again, it's not scriptural. It does talk a little bit about the marriage system and the mohar. The mohar is a bride price that would have been paid for the bride to join the male's family, to join the son's family. Remember, women were often seen as property during this time. So even Michal, who is a royal, would have been seen to a point as property, okay? And so Jesse would have felt like he needed to purchase that property for his son. And so that's kind of how it worked there. So not too much to see here, but we do go back to Dinah in the wilderness here, and we're going to see what she does as she's looking for someone in the wilderness. So here we see four people. Looks like, of course, we got Doeg here in the foreground. Then we've got the guy with an eye patch right here, who is obviously some sort of bandit or evil guy that's a part of all this. We have a donkey holding a bunch of pigeons, who Doeg is probably purchasing from. Then it looks like we got some sort of fur traders or traders of some sort that maybe are neutral in this, but are working with this guy for some reason, or working with Doeg just to sell wares. Not 100% sure there of who these people are supposed to be, but that's the four guys that we have right here. First off, I'm not sure how Dinah was ready for this. Second off, she's obviously an amazing shot to be able to kill a little tiny pigeon. Anyway, she ends up getting this letter, and that letter says something. We're not really ever told what it says entirely. we just kind of see the letter. She reads it here, and then we're going to see it again a little bit later, but we'll come back to that in a bit. We're never really told what the letter actually says, just it kind of implied what's kind of going on there. Now, next, we see this moment with, with Eshbaal and Saul.
Edom will send 20 wagons of grain before Yom Torah.
So here he says Edom is going to send certain supplies to help out through the winter for the Israelite nation. And then they're going to send even more supplies later on before Sukkot or by Sukkot. So basically what this is saying is that Eshbaal has convinced the Edomites to give them supplies for the winter. Now, we don't really see what they want in return quite yet, but Saul is kind of surprised at this, that Eshbaal was able to negotiate this for the nation.
20 more by Sukkot. That and a small tithe from the tribes should see us through the winter.
I wouldn't have thought it possible.
All things are possible, Father.
Come. The king of Edom would not offer this if there was not something in it for him.
Of course. The details I leave to you.
Now, at this point watching the episode, I was like, I know exactly who the king of Edom is. I was like, oh, okay, that's what they're doing. But yeah, there's definitely there's some things going on here. You can just tell, right?
But the king intends to travel here shortly to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And you were right. He is bitter. But he is also wise enough to recognize that we are much more powerful. And he needs new alliances. He seemed eager to move on from old grievances.
Yep. And now, essentially at this point, watching the episode in real time, I'm like, okay, we can't trust anything that Eshbaal says, essentially. Everything that's coming out of his mouth is probably a lie. And so we have to look past that and see what's actually going on here, which, of course, we tried to do throughout this episode.
I have underestimated you, my son.
So Saul is finally proud of Eshbaal. It's probably something that he's very happy about. Here is another scene we're not really going to talk about. Nothing super important here. Just some sisters kind of making up after all the fights that they've had with Michal, slapping Merav, and then Merav being super mad at Michal and all that kind of stuff. They're finally making up and becoming sisters again. And she helps her pick out a necklace for the wedding, which is what they do here. They decide to not only wear a certain necklace, but also this ring, which I believe was given to her by Ahinoam, by their mom. And so, yeah, they have that there. So there's this moment here of her having that. Then we get into the actual wedding, and we can have this moment here.
Where have you been?
A conversation for later.
There's blood in your hands.
Yes, I was hunting. I'm sorry.
It is crazy to me that that Merav had time to handle the deer, go back home, and get completely dressed up for this wedding and look perfect. Where Dinah, I guess she was just hiding and she was scared. She didn't know what to do. So she never got ready for the wedding when Merav was with her originally during the hunt. So yeah.
Like I said, we'll talk later.
Look, David is coming.
Look at you, baby.
So let's talk about, as this is going, let's talk about just the wedding ceremony in general. Now, obviously the wedding ceremony would have changed throughout time to have different traditions and different things happening during those different times. But generally you would have a mohar or a bride price that was paid. Then you would have the male, and they would go and they would make basically the first home for the couple. Okay, he would build it. Now, in this case, the fact that Michal is a royal would kind of change things quite a lot. It would probably expedite a large portion of what's going on here. I don't know if it would happen this fast because this is a TV show. It kind of needs to happen immediately, right? This is way more like a traditional marriage or a more modern marriage, I should say, where, someone gets married, they're immediately married, boom, that's it, right? In the Jewish society, normally marriages would, like a wedding feast would happen like over the course of a week. You'd have a lot of different things happening. There'd be a lot of parties, a lot of craziness happening all the time. Especially a big royal wedding like this would be a really, really big deal. And so, yeah, I think there'd be a lot more fanfare. There'd be a lot more things happening than we're seeing here in the show. Just imagine it's like 10 times bigger and 10 times longer than what we're seeing here in the show. But because Michal is a royal, David wouldn't have to go and build a house because they would live in the palace because he would become a prince of Israel essentially. And so it's a little bit different than what we would expect to see for a normal marriage. Yeah. So this is really interesting and something that I kind of heard in the midst of this episode and thought about. I was like, the song returns, first of all, the song that is the kind of the telltale like love and loyalty song of this show, which is I'll kind of rewind it and show you here. If you listen closely underneath, you're going to hear the song here. So you hear that? Ba-da-da-da-da-da. That song has been played since season 1. Whenever we talk about it's specifically like in moments of love or like a hava, right? Like this love that comes. Like it's not necessarily erotic love all the time. It can happen between Saul and Michal, for example, like this father-daughter kind of love. But then it also happens quite often. Most of the time, it happens between David and Michal. Okay, the da 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 da. That song just comes on a lot whenever we're talking about the love story between David and Michal. But this is the first time that we've heard it like this, and I'll rewind it one more time. The way that it's being shown here is played on something like a thin sort of flute, like a thin wooden flute or something like that. And it's really, really, really shaky, okay? Showing like, yes, this is a moment of love, but it's really fragile, right? And I think the musical storytelling is there on purpose to show this. So let's play it again. And even in this moment, it's supposed to be like her biggest triumph as Michal getting married to David. It feels very somber, very soft, very delicate, very mysterious in some ways. It doesn't feel triumphant. It doesn't feel strong. It doesn't feel like a victory, which we know it's really not. Like in some ways that this almost feels more like a funeral than a wedding.
My king, I have come into your house that you may give me your daughter Michal as my wife. And may the Lord make this...
Of course, they're showing Joab yet again. I wonder why they keep on doing this. Like I said, in the future, I think that they might connect Joab and Michal to be like, if only you had chosen Joab, your life would have been better, right? Like kind of like a what if sort of moment for Michal, because I think she's going to come to the point to realize that David is not the person that she would have wanted to be with, right? We're going to see that throughout history because, like I said earlier, let me come back to this. In scripture, it clearly tells us that Michal loved David, right? But it never tells us that David loved Michal. And why is that such a big deal? I've talked about it from the David side of things several times in these breakdown videos. But the number one thing that I didn't talk about is why it's so important that Michal loves David. Do you ever remember a time in scripture where we see that Sarah loved Abraham, or that Rachel loved Jacob, or that Leah loved Jacob, or that think of any other couple, right, in scripture, okay? Zipporah loving Moses, right? I can guarantee you that there is no other female in all of scripture that is described as loving a male counterpart, okay? Now, in particular, by name, right? The only other examples that we can get of this is in Song of Solomon, for example. But within all of scripture, Michal is the only female character that is ever described as loving a male character, okay? I think this is intentional. I think this is purposeful, okay? It doesn't mean that Rachel didn't love Jacob. It didn't mean that these other women, Zipporah, didn't love Moses. But the fact that the Bible goes out of its way to make Michal the only female in the entire book that loves a male counterpart, it is interesting to me, right? It is interesting to me that it's pointed that way. And so there's something to that. I don't know what it is necessarily. I don't want to read into it too much, but there's definitely something to that, to see that Michal kind of found her identity in David in many ways. And what happens to her? Well, she kind of falls into this world of David becomes her identity, at least within the show. I think this is definitely where they're going to take this. David becomes her identity to a point where, like, she wants to be with him so badly, and then what happens to that? It all falls apart. David is he's being sought after by Saul in order to be killed. Then we see we see that he eventually has wife after wife after wife after wife, which we talked about last week. And then on top of that, we see she eventually returns to David, but for what purpose? Is it because David loves her so much? Or is it because David needs to use her as a political pawn in order to get his kingship of Israel? Yeah, I don't know. There's some hard things in there for Michal. I think Michal is one of the saddest stories that we're getting within House of David. And it's not very much fun, right? It's not very much fun for her. I think that she's eventually going to find true love with another husband later on, at least within the House of David. Then she's going to be taken away from that husband who really, really loves her, and then is going to be put back with David, and she is going to have a very miserable time. I think that's what's going to happen. But we'll see how they play it out in House of David, what they change in order to make it work for them, or if they're really going to play into that truth of where scripture happens there. But yeah, it's going to be crazy. But I do think Joab is going to play a role there in some way.
Women like Rachel and Leah, who together built the family of our nation. May we be established in Gibeah and famous in Bethlehem and all the tributes of Israel. And may our children profess their loyalty to this kingdom. And their
This is an interesting piece too. Let all our children profess loyalty to this kingdom. Of course, David does believe Saul is still anointed. We see this even later on when he has a chance to kill Saul. He doesn't. And so instead of killing Saul, he cuts a piece of his robe and says, I could have killed you, but I don't want to touch the Lord's anointed, right? And so even here, he's saying in the future with our kids, they will serve this kingdom. And he's trying to be as obedient as possible, being as humble and kind and patient and gentle as possible in this moment, which is indicative of who David was, for sure.
love to Adonai for all eternity.
To my beautiful daughter, Michal, and my new son, the Giant Slayer!
You will be my wife for all the time God affords us together.
Long may it be. you, David.
I love you, Michal.
So the marriage is there. That's what happens there. Now, during the wedding ceremony, we actually get a few different key moments that I want to talk about here. Jordan giving them a gift, I think, is quite interesting. Nothing too crazy to talk about there in terms of him giving them a gift. But it is kind of interesting that he was going to be betrothed to Merav, and then eventually he gives them a gift here. And he's kind of still a background character that they're keeping around. I wonder why that is. We know that eventually Merav is going to be married to Adriel, his father, which is going to be totally weird and creepy. We have never seen Adriel's wife again, so I wonder if there's something that happens with her or there's something else that's kind of going on there. I just don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to have to see. But I think it is interesting that we do see this kind of this character recurring over and over again here. And then, of course, we're going to get into some other things. We're going to skip over this Jesse part. He's sad to see David leave. One thing that I will point out is that I think this is the first time that someone references David as King David here.
Why must you leave so early?
I have proudly witnessed your marriage, son. Now I must return to our flocks.
Thank you for coming all this way.
David. Seems your mother was right. King David.
So here, King David, first time we're really seeing that there. Of course, David shushes him and they have a small conversation off to the side, talking about how his mother was right, about he is going to rise up. Again, not scriptural here, but part of the story that they're doing here. Next, we see as Adriel comes and speaks with him and tries to get his rise to power here.
My son.
Let's go, baby.
David, you have exalted the tribe of Judah. For this, I bless you.
What is it you want, Adriel?
Come now. I'm here to celebrate your rise and remind you who cleared the path along the way.
So he's playing the same card that he did before at the tabernacle, which at the tabernacle, if you remember, he said, hey, I did this thing. I saved your life. And now you owe me, right? David, of course, didn't really buy it back then, and now he's really pushing forward here as well.
God clears my path.
Yes, but God gives you friends as well, does he not? And if you are to achieve your ambitions, you will need them, huh?
It's very strange to say that the leader of the tribe of Judah would have someone murdered like this, and then tried to like rise to power through it. I know that there were evil people. I know that nobody in the Bible is perfect, but I think in general, like they had better ideals than this. They had better morals than this throughout Israel because of the commandments of Moses and everything happening there. Like the people in general were not evil people in the sense of like just they're murdering everybody and everything is like just whatever they need to do to gain political power. So this is a little bit more Game of Thronesy than I think historically we would see. And if something like this did happen, I think that we would see it written about as well, right? So historically, it's kind of iffy for me here.
I know.
Joab there again giving a nod towards Adriel and David. This is going to play into the season finale, so just keep that in mind there as well.
What you did. My family grieved Tovia and his kin.
So Tobiah or Tovia, as pronounced in this show, that's the family that Adriel said was the anointed family, and it turns out they weren't. And of course, Eliav is the one that had to go and basically murder them.
They were innocent.
Do you know who put the blade to his heart and his family, even the baby? Huh? Your own brother, Eliav. So tell me, is he innocent or you? Oh, David.
So Adriel is almost trying to guilt David, saying that it's your fault actually that your neighbors died, not mine. Not that I put it, not that I did that, you know. It's actually your fault, bro. And so David doesn't buy into that either. He's not really falling for the traps that Adriel is trying to set, which really makes Adriel mad here.
There is much you do not know, my little shepherd boy, and nothing escapes my ears.
And you expect me to reward you for this?
When you have taken the throne, yes, or one word from me to Saul, and the next blood on the ground will be yours.
So he's threatening him here now. He's saying, oh, all I have to do is talk to Saul, tell him who the real anointed one was, and you'll be dead, right? But there's a big problem with that, which David points out here. It's really, really good logical writing here.
And what do you expect happens then, huh? When the king finds out you lied about Samuel's anointed.
Again, God's anointed, not Samuel's anointed.
Huh? Speak the truth, and they will be the last words to ever leave your mouth.
Yeah, very true. If this wasn't talked about in the episode, this would have been a huge loophole that I would have talked about here, which is like, of course, if Adriel says anything, then Saul's going to be like, okay, you lied to me last time. Why would I believe you now? Kill him. You know, he wouldn't believe him. He would be like, why are you trying to kill David? You know, you're the liar. Like, why don't I just kill you instead? And so then Adriel has to figure out a way around this so that he is not the one that gets attacked basically at the end of it. In fact, maybe he's the one that gets rewarded because of it.
I owe you nothing.
So he says, I owe you nothing. David here has a small conversation with Eliav, who he says, I know what you did. And then Eliav says, then if you know what I did, then there's nothing more to talk about. They kind of leave it there. Very kind of passive, sort of like, don't talk to me about the evil that I've done sort of moment. Then right after that, we have one more conversation between Adriel and Eshbaal.
Enjoy. Lovely to speak to you.
Eshbaal, congratulations on your sister's special day.
Thank you, Adriel.
Although, let's be honest, this union cannot be helpful to you, huh?
Oh, and why is that?
Well, David is just one more obstacle between you and the throne.
Oh, I was never destined for the throne. You're speaking to the wrong brother.
Yeah, and so this, again, is where Eshbaal is just straight up lying. I think everything that he's doing is to get to the throne. I don't think that it is in any way altruistic or like, that he's just trying to, that he has like some good plan for the nation. He's just trying to help out his dad, Like, I think all of this is a fast track path to the throne for Eshbaal specifically. And he's been kind of convinced that that's what he needs to do by whoever he's working with.
Am I? Come, Eshbaal. I know how a man like you thinks. I see you for who you are.
What do you see?
Ambition, fierceness, all the makings of a king. If only there was someone who could help clear those obstacles, huh?
I no longer drink wine.
So here Adriel is seeing his time, right? And so he is saying, I can get you what you want. I know you're not admitting it, but I can get you what you want. Why is Adriel doing this? Because he knows that he can't go straight to Saul. So he needs a proxy to go to Saul for him. Then he won't be blamed for all of this, right? It makes Eshbaal look really, really good. And it makes Adriel not have to take the brunt of the punishment here.
Trust me, you will want to drink when you hear this. I have been holding a secret. The truth. David is not at all who he says he is. Come.
So Eshbaal here showing a little bit of his true colors. He actually takes the cup of wine, which is kind of a symbol of him showing who he truly is, I think. I don't think Eshbaal just randomly gave up wine because he thinks it's the best thing for him or because he was tortured. There's more to it than that. And they keep on referencing it over and over again because there's a particular point that's being made there. I think eventually when Eshbaal does become king, eventually he will start drinking again and he will have that sort of past self kind of re-established within him because he is not a very good king. We know that. He's only king for about 2 years in scripture. And so we know exactly like how the type of king that he's going to be. It's going to be a very weak Israel. And David is going to eventually become stronger than him and then eventually overthrow him. And he's going to be killed by an assassin. All this kind of stuff happens later on. But we're going to see that creep back in for sure. Then here we've got this big montage. Again, a lot of AI shots here. I haven't mentioned it a lot throughout the season, but basically every wide shot that you see like this, a ton of them are AI. You can definitely tell in these torch scenes, they're not the best. I wish they were better, bro. I wish they were better. I wouldn't have a problem with it, but they are not the best. Yep. David singing again here, really beautiful. My guess is this is going to be a Song of Solomon song or something associated with that from the Psalms. And so we see that there. We see the marriage happening here, the palm branches. I'm not sure why they would have the palm branches. Generally, the palm branches were like a sign of victory, at least in history that we've seen. I don't know if they would have them during like a wedding like this. Maybe it was just a way for them to celebrate during that time. I don't really know if that would be there. Yeah, not 100%. But we see Eshbaal in the background of this montage is talking about the true story of what happened with David and giving his father the truth.
His name, this outcast, joined your household, comforted you with his music, married your daughter, and yet he never told you the truth. That the prophet Samuel journeyed to his home, which is why his curse was passed to you. All along, he was the cause of the very torment from which he was meant to comfort you. We have been deceived. You killed the wrong son of Judah. Think of it, Father. He slayed the giant. God has favored him in battle time after time, as he once favored you. The traitor you seek has been here in your house the whole time, right in front of you.
So here Eshbaal is not saying, hey, Adriel told me this, right? Because he even knows that his father will have the reaction of like, oh, then it's Adriel who's lying and I need to kill that guy. What Eshbaal is doing is he's taking the credit for logically thinking through this, and he then is telling his father about the truth, quote unquote, right? And so that is how he's trying to get him here.
The anointed one is David.
And so there we go with that. We see that whole moment there. Then we get to this moment where Dina and Eshbaal have this talk on the roof. Someone's asking in the comments real fast, did King Saul really find out this way? No. King Saul never finds out. There's not, in reality, there is never this like, this underlying tone of like, oh, Samuel's anointed someone else and I have to find out who it is, right? What he knows is that the anointing has been taken away from him, right? And he knows that that David is becoming more and more and more popular, and he becomes more and more jealous of David. But there's never this moment of like King Saul knows that someone has been anointed by Samuel and that they are coming for the throne, right? It's just his base level sort of paranoia and you know, being tormented by this spirit from God, right? And so it doesn't really work the same way as it does in House of David. It's not historically accurate in that way of like oh, Saul is like looking for this anointed one all the time. I almost spilled my water everywhere. That Saul is looking for this anointed one all the time. It just wasn't actually that way.
Dina, what's so important that you wanted to talk to me about? What is it?
I don't know who in the palace we can trust.
What do you mean?
Today, in the woods, I've witnessed a man with a patch over one eye. It was the same man who killed my father.
All right, so she's referencing all the things that happened earlier today. She was hunting with Marav. She sees this guy in the forest. She finds this message. And that is like, it's a really, really big deal. It's been messing with her all day. Now she can finally talk to her husband about it.
How can you be sure?
Because I followed him.
What?
Eshbaal, he was meeting with Doeg. I told you I had a bad feeling about that man.
No.
What if the attack on our convoy wasn't just bandits? What if it was planned? I mean, someone here in the palace is...
A conspiracy? Who?
We have to go.
Yeah, who could it be?
Go to the king now.
No. My father has been off balance lately. The smallest thing can set him off. And he'd never believe that about Doeg, not without proof.
I have proof. Here.
You have to understand everything that Eshbaal is saying here. He's trying to logically disprove Dinah because he loves her, which is so twisted, man. It is so twisted.
Read it. The silos weren't burned by the Philistines and more attacks are planned.
Okay, so that little strip of paper, basically she paraphrased it. She said that, let's go back. We'll listen to what she says one more time here.
The silos weren't...
So the silos weren't burned by the Philistines?
Burned by the Philistines and more attacks are planned.
And more attacks are planned. Now, we do see this little note here. And again, just like all the other kind of written notes that we see in House of David, I think this is just movie prop language. This is like kind of sort of looks like Hebrew, but actually isn't Hebrew sort of language. Unlike The Chosen, where The Chosen, most of the time when we see something written, it is actually Hebrew. We can actually read it. Here, it is not. It is just random kind of like movie language.
You must leave this with me. Speak of it to no one.
Eshbaal, they murdered my father.
Tina, stop.
So again, this is Eshbaal trying to save her here.
Why? No, I won't let this rest. I can't. What? What is it? Huh?
I didn't expect this.
What?
To fall in love with you.
I love the contrast just visually of this scene. We have Dinah, who's like in this red hue tone here, and then Eshbaal, who's in this blue kind of tone here. Almost like a good versus bad vibe. Like it's so interesting here.
Sorry.
Boom. Eek. Oh man. Yeah, I know a lot of people were very surprised about this scene here. Dinah being thrown down the wall. And there she is. So yeah, so Dinah obviously being killed here by Eshbaal. Worse than that, his sister is right around the corner. And now, not only did he just kill his wife, but he's trying to save his sister, which is what we see in the full next scene here. They have a whole conversation where he convinces her to basically act like their mom in a lot of ways, which is so ironic. So ironic. Nobody believed me about Eshbaal in the earlier episodes of this season. They're like, oh no, he's just a great guy now. I told you guys. I told you something was off with this guy. Yeah, man, so crazy. Some people are confused a little bit in the comments. They're saying, what about the baby? This is not the woman who's pregnant. She was not pregnant. So it was just her that died. But Eshbaal convinces Merav here to basically keep this quiet, to work alongside him. And that's exactly what we see in the next scene, because he has a plan for the future of Israel and she is going to go along with it here. And so he convinces her. In the next scene, we see Dinah and Eshbaal basically convincing everybody else that she actually committed suicide instead of what actually happened here. And so Merav and Eshbaal convince them of that. And here is Merav coming in to explain her side of things as well. Now, we're not going to get into this too much. We're just going to finish out the episode. They are convinced that she did end her own life there. And then we see here that we see the return of the scene that we saw earlier on in the season, I think at the beginning of episode 2, where now we see Michal and David are married. And then we see as Abner comes and grabs David because Saul has called him. You can see here, this is after their wedding night. I can say that's the best way I can probably say it. He's playing her a little bit of a song in bed, and now Abner comes to knock on the door on their wedding night.
Apologies, my prince. The king calls for you. He needs to hear you play.
Now? Is he unwell?
I'm sure he'll be fine.
So we see this here, and then he goes to the chambers, and of course we see the repeat of what we saw before.
My king.
I loved you, trusted you, and still you betrayed me.
My king, I am loyal to you. I always have been.
Loyal.
And so we see the end of this. He throws the spear at him, and that's the end of the episode here.
No.
And of course, the hardest line of all the season here.
God chose me.
Yep, I am disappointed. A little bit of a spoiler for episode 8, just at the very beginning. I am disappointed they didn't have the spear stick in the wall, because the Bible specifically says that he tried to pin David to the wall. The spear stuck in the wall. So a little bit disappointed it didn't stick in the wall, which we're going to see in episode 8. But lots of stuff to talk about in episode 8, of course. Lots of kind of conclusions to things, opening up new curiosity loops for the future of what's happening with House of David and everything that's happening with Eshbaal and all that kind of stuff. Really interesting stuff in episode 8, so don't miss that one. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. Of course, we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.